Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Cassidy. Thanks so much for watching this video. Today's video is an October wrap up, so every book I read in October. Like I said in my last video, I was in a little bit of a reading slump, so I felt like I didn't get through as many books as I wanted to, but also I was surprised at how many books I did read this month. I read 6 in total, so let's get into it. I'm not gonna give away any spoilers in the first part of the video, but if you want to hear about spoilers or if you've already read the books and just want to know my full opinion on them, then I'll include that part at the end of the video, so keep watching for that. But you'll know when that's gonna happen. I'll give a little warning that this section is the spoiler section, so just so everyone knows. So I read 3 books, physical copies, and 3 books on my Kindle. The first book I read this month was Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I feel like I've seen this book everywhere. It's a pretty aesthetic book, so I see it in pictures on Bookstagram and stuff, and I just never picked it up. But my friend and I were in the bookstore a while ago, honestly, and we both bought it and we're like, we're gonna read this at the same time. It's gonna be so fun. But of course, she read it before me and I was a little late to reading it. So this book is a memoir following Dolly, who lives in the UK, and it basically just documents everything she did in her 20s. I was a little bit disappointed in this book, I'm not gonna lie. I just feel like it was so hyped up and I was so excited to read it, but I just felt like it was a lot of Dolly discussing how much she messed up in her 20s, and by no means is that a bad thing. I think that's important to talk about. But in this case, it just felt like she was talking repeatedly about her binge drinking and alcoholism, the many guys that she hooked up with, the many one-night stands, which again, not shaming anyone, but it was just repeatedly discussed. And then how she basically had no money, but she somehow managed to keep living. And I feel like she wasn't really acknowledging the privilege that she had to do that, where other people don't have the same privilege to just pretty much just party and do drugs and drink all this alcohol throughout their 20s and still be okay and be successful at the end. And then basically at the end of the book, it was and so in conclusion, friends are the most important thing. And while that is great, I agree that, I love my friends and they're very important to me, it just felt like a kind of a weird way to end the book. And I wish that she would have talked about her female friendships more than focusing on the guys that she was sleeping with. Also, throughout the book, there were recipes and kind of random tidbits thrown in, which I felt wasn't really necessary and didn't add anything to the book for me, if I'm being honest. But it just didn't hit as hard for me as I wanted it to, which is unfortunate. Okay, the next book I read was Enemies with Benefits by Roxy Noir, I think. That's how you pronounce her last name. This book, I had literally no clue going into it. I didn't really know what to expect. I got it on the Stuff Your Kindle day. It's the first book in a series. I think it's the Loveless Brothers series, because this book follows Eli, but he has I think 4 or 5 brothers, and the rest of the series follows each brother. So again, I really didn't know what to expect going into this. I just thought it sounded like a cute romance to read. But it was so good. I ate it up. I flew through it. This book is a childhood enemies to lovers book. It's also a workplace romance. This book follows Violet and Eli. Violet has been in this town her entire life. She's never lived anywhere else. And her mom died, and she's basically stayed in this trailer that they've lived in. It's not that she's unhappy in her life, but she just wishes that she had a little more. And she's working as a wedding planner right now. Eli has lived all over the place. I don't know if there's a place he hasn't lived, but he's a chef and he comes back home to spend more time with his family because he misses them. He has a big family and he's been away for a while. So he comes back and takes a job at this wedding business as the caterer. So he's the chef for the catering company. So Eli and Violet are working together. And when they realize that they're gonna be working together, it's automatically they're this is a no.
Yeah, immediately no. Immediately no. Immediately no.
They've hated each other since childhood. They've bullied each other. And to add to their hatred for one another, there's also this competition bonus thing at their work. So basically like the best employee will be awarded with this $20,000 bonus. And Violet really wants it because she is obsessed with this house and she keeps looking at it and she's like, if I win this $20,000, I can get this house. Eli's just obviously like, there's so much I could do with the money, but also I just want to beat Violet. In the midst of them working together and hating each other, they realize that there's this like really strong sexual, like physical attraction, but they still like don't like anything else about the other person. So they decide to start this like purely sexual relationship. No feelings, no, like they still despise each other, but then, you know, they hook up. And obviously within this comes feelings, and they realize that they do like each other by the end of the book. The steamy parts were steamy, the banter was good, like seeing the two of them at work, you know, like just the little looks that he would give her and like winking at her at work, and like it was so cute. I really was loving it. The next book I read was Caught Up by Liz Tomford, which is the third book in the Windy City series. And this series is a sports romance series that follows a bunch of like interconnected characters. I think the first book is a hockey romance and the second book is a basketball romance. I read both of them and literally was obsessed with them. And then this third book follows Kai and Miller, and it's a baseball romance. So Kai fits into this story because he's the friend of the first two couples in the first two books. I love this series so much. I love all of the characters, and I love that you still see the previous characters in the other books. Like, there were so many moments in this book where you saw the other two couples. Also, I think this is a good series if you're maybe trying to get into the sports romance, but like you don't really know which one you like or which one you like the most, because like I said, it's like a bunch of different sports, so I think it covers a good ground. But like I said, this book follows Kai and Miller. It's a single dad romance and found family. I guess I should say single dad and nanny romance. It's also a forced proximity romance, so there's all the tropes mixed in. It's an age gap romance. I forgot about that one. Kai is a newly single dad in the sense that he didn't know basically that he had a kid until the kid was like 6 months old, and the kind of like baby mama just dropped the kid off and was like, I don't want the kid, you can take care of him. He also plays baseball and he's like a really good baseball player. Miller is the daughter of Kai's coach, and she is a baker who's like very well known in the baking world. She's in her early 20s, I know that, but she's very well respected and like a very good, well-known baker, but she's kind of lost her mojo and she can't seem to bake anything right. So she decides she needs to take the summer off, and she decides to spend the summer with her dad, traveling with him and the baseball team, because she never gets to see him anymore because they're always both on the road. Also, she goes to different restaurants and kind of like helps them with their baking, if that makes sense. But she basically just helps like get these kitchens and like desserts or whatever like up and running, and then she goes to the next restaurant. But when she comes to stay with her dad for the summer, she ends up becoming the nanny for Kai's kid Max, because Kai keeps firing all of the nannies that are being hired for him. His coach is like, listen, I have the perfect nanny for you that you're not going to be allowed to fire because it's my daughter. They immediately hate each other from the beginning. Kai thinks that Miller is immature and he doesn't want her watching his son. He's a total helicopter parent and it's so annoying, but I mean, I get it. As the book goes on, she starts living with him, staying with him, to watch Max like while he's playing baseball. They start falling for each other. Kai kind of like lost his personality since finding out that he was a dad. Before Max, he was like a flirt, he was a little like playboy, like he was a different person, and then when he became a dad, he just changed and became like closed off to everyone. But when he's around Miller, she kind of like brings out that side in him, and they're like flirting with each other, but he's like, I can't flirt with her, like she's so young and she's also the nanny and my coach's daughter, like everything's wrong about this. I really liked this book. I don't know if it was my favorite book in the series, but I did really enjoy it. The next book I read is You Again by Kate Goldbeck, which If you watched my previous video, I did a whole reading vlog of this book, so I'm not going to go too much into detail. This book is an enemies to friends to benefits. It's set in New York. It's a fun fall read. It follows Ari and Josh. Ari is not a relationship person. She's a very much like casual hookup person. Turns out that Ari and Josh are seeing the same people at the beginning of the book, and then they kind of part ways but find themselves coming back together, weirdly like interconnected through a bunch of people in their lives. When they meet up again, they start hanging out super platonically just as friends, but over the course of the book they turn into more than friends, and you kind of see the relationship play out. It starts in 2014 and there's time jumps throughout the book. I think this is a super cute romance if you're in the mood for a fall read. October's over, but November is still fall vibes. So if you're looking for that kind of book, I think this is a good one. The next book I read was Hopeless by Elsie Silver, which is the newest book in the Chestnut Springs series, which I absolutely ate up and also inspired this sweatshirt, Cowboy Romance Book Club, because it's a cowboy romance series, which I never thought I would be into, but I am very much into it. So if you don't know what the series is about, it follows, like I said, cowboys, but a bunch of guys, mostly the brothers, but also their really close friend who's like a brother, so, you know, follows the brothers and their romantic relationships. So this one follows Beau. This one is an age gap romance. It's a fake dating, fake engaged trope, you know, forced proximity. I was really excited for this because I read a preview for it. I think it was in the last book that I read in the series. These books are set in Canada, and Beau is a soldier, but he's like almost the equivalent to like the US Marines / Navy, like very intelligent, very top secret. I don't know if that makes sense, but you get where I'm going. And we see Beau in the other books in the series. You kind of fall in love with him in these other books. When Beau was on his last mission, operation, I don't know the right words, but he was really badly injured because he stayed behind to save another soldier, and he was burned really bad. But this book follows him and also Bailey. Bailey is 22, so like I said, it's an age gap romance. I think Beau is like 35 or something. Everyone kind of looks down on her. Her family, they're like alcoholics, and it's so bad that basically she can't get a job in town because everyone looks down on her. So she's working at this bar in town as a bartender. Beau is working for his brother on their farm, their ranch or whatever, but he like hates his job and like barely goes to his job, and instead decides to hang out at this bar and becomes almost like obsessed with Bailey and protecting her, and sits at the bar for hours and watches Bailey work, which could come across weird, but Bailey eats it up. Their house is like the land like is right up against each other, and they meet up one night and decide that they're gonna fake their engagement, and they think that this will help Bailey get a job in town because everyone loves Beau and his family, and because they respect his family. If she is about to have his last name, she'll be able to get a job. Beau's family's constantly on him. He thinks that this will get them off of his back. So once they get engaged, they're not supposed to actually be together. Besides the fake kind of like touching and kissing in front of people, they're like not supposed to do that behind closed doors. But of course, you know what happens, they do, and they start falling for each other. I'm not sure I loved this book. I wanted to really like it, but the age gap weirded me out. It didn't need to be weird, but it was, because the author made Bailey a virgin and made Beau's inner dialogue just constantly thinking about that and about her innocence, which I thought was really weird. I just wasn't in love with this book in the way that I thought I would be, and that really did disappoint me because I was so excited to read this book. I also think this is the last book in the series, which is kind of a disappointing end to the series. And the last and final book I read this month was My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine, not sure. This book, if you can't guess it from the title, is a vampire romance. It's a roommates to lovers, forced proximity, romance. This follows Cassie and Frederick. Cassie is an artist. She doesn't have a lot of money. She's working some odds and end job. She's kicked out of her apartment and she sees this ad in the newspaper for a roommate and the rent is $200 a month. And she's like, okay, that's perfect, but also a little too perfect. Who is charging $200 for rent? Like, where can you find those prices these days? But she decides to reach out and Frederick is the one offering the room and he's obviously the vampire. She doesn't know he's a vampire when she moves in, but she quickly realizes it when she finds a bag of blood in the fridge, or multiple bags of blood. And she's like, what is going on here? I found that it was really hard for me to suspend my disbelief in this book. And right at the point where I was like fully accepting, okay, this is a modern romance with a vampire. And as soon as I was fully accepting that, the book was over. Like, I felt like I just wanted more from this book. I just wanted more details. I felt like the characters weren't fully fleshed out yet. Yeah, it just needed more for me. Frederick, like, he's like hundreds of years old and he's been in a coma for like 100 years and he wakes up and he's in, you know, present day. So he needs a roommate to try and teach him how to live in the modern world because he's only used to living how he did 100 years ago and dressing that way and talking that way, and he has literally no clue about anything. I think this was a cute read for Halloween and this time of the month, but I just wasn't in love. Like I said, I just wanted more, but it was a cute story. I enjoyed it. I just wanted more from it. So those are the 6 books I read this month. If you want to stick around for the spoilers, that's what we're going to talk about next. But if not, thanks so much for watching this video. Okay, if you haven't read these books, then maybe don't watch this part because I'm going to talk about, I don't really know if they're going to be spoilers, but just in case, I don't want to like give anything away that would ruin the book, so probably just don't watch this. Okay, really it's just a few of the books I read this month, but the first one I want to talk about is Caught Up, the 3rd book in the Windy City series, and I wanted to talk about this because in that book, we're introduced to Kai's brother Isaiah, and we're kind of led to believe that the next book is going to be about Isaiah and Kennedy is the baseball team's like trainer, I guess. And Isaiah is also on this baseball team and he's like very much a flirt, a player. He hooks up with girls all the time. It's, I think, supposed to come off in a like jokey, flirty way of him and Kennedy, where like Kennedy is not interested in him. She's engaged for a little bit and then she like doesn't have her ring on and Isaiah is just constantly flirting with her, but the flirting comes across a little bit as harassment, like sexual harassment, and I don't think that's cool. So obviously, I don't know how I feel about the next book, if it is going to be about them, because he just takes things too far, and it's like she's saying like she's not interested, but he just like keeps going, and it's like, at what point is that, like, just stop? So, didn't love that. Also, I sometimes just hate the 3rd act breakup in a romance book, and this one had it. Kai and Miller are together, and then she's like, no, like, I'm gonna go back and do my baking thing and I'm sorry, but like I just can't. And the whole time she's against getting with Kai because she knows that she doesn't like commitment. She's not a commitment person. But then she falls for Kai's kid, Max, and literally Max is calling her like mama, and she just leaves anyways, even though she like knows that she wants to be with Kai. It just felt unnecessary. Like I'm just tired of the breakup part of it. Like, it just didn't need to happen. Like, I get it for the story, but I just feel like it's so annoying. Okay, the next book that I want to talk about is Hopeless by Elsie Silver. Like I said in the first part of the video, I thought that the age gap was weird because Beau kept bringing up her innocence and stuff. It felt like he was grooming her, and that really weirded me out. Like, I don't think it would have been as weird if Bailey wasn't a virgin, but because she was a virgin, he kept thinking about like how young and innocent she was and how he was teaching her all these things like sexually. Like, it just kept being brought up throughout the book, and it's like, okay, we get it, like, you're older than her, like, it doesn't have to be weird, and he made it weird, or like the author made it weird. Like, I just didn't love that at all. Also, I think it's weird that he would sit at the bar for hours and hours and just watch her. Like, that's creepy and makes it even weirder because you're older than her, and that's weird. It would be weird for any guy to sit at the bar and stare at you, but like, weird. Also, like I said, like, he has PTSD. He keeps bringing up in the book that he hates his job and his job working for his brothers, and he doesn't want to do it. And it's like, okay, that's fine that you don't want to do your job. A lot of people don't want to do their jobs, but they still do them. They still go to their jobs every day because that's what you have to do. So for him to just be like, I don't want to do my job, and then he just doesn't go to work, or he goes to work for like an hour and then is like lying to his brothers about where he's going, and then going to sit and watch Bailey at the bar instead of working. It's like, not to be Kim, but like, get your ass up and work.
Get your fucking ass up and work.
You know what I mean? It was just, ugh. Okay, the last book I have thoughts on is My Roommate is a Vampire. And like I said, I just felt like this book needed more details. It felt like incomplete, just like rushed. I don't know, but there's so many things that we just didn't learn about. Cassie has her best friend Sam, who is so worried about her living with Frederick, naturally, because it seems like he might be a serial killer, because obviously, you know, vampires aren't real, or so everyone thinks. So you wouldn't be thinking, oh, my best friend is moving in with a vampire. No, you're thinking, my best friend is moving in with a serial killer who wants to charge a young woman $200 to live with me. That's what you think. He meets Frederick multiple times, but once Cassie and Frederick get in a relationship, we don't really know what does Sam say about that? Like, how does she break the news to him? Like, does she tell Sam that Frederick's a vampire? Like, what's up with that? We literally never find that out. It's just kind of like glossed over, and you don't hear about Sam at all. Also, Cassie constantly wonders where Frederick gets his money from, because he doesn't have a job. He just woke up from a 100-year nap, and that's never discussed. She, like, I think at one point she says, oh, I'm gonna ask him. She never does. But he clearly has money somehow. He pays for things. Like, I don't know where that comes from. At the end of the book, Cassie basically says that she's gonna seriously consider becoming a vampire. And then the book just kind of ends, and it's like, hello? Like, what would that look like? What would that mean for Cassie? It just felt so incomplete. I have so many questions that are unanswered, and they're not gonna be answered. Anyways, those are my thoughts on the books that I read, and that officially concludes this video. So thanks so much for watching. I hope everyone enjoyed. Let me know what you read this month, if you've read any of these books, if you want to read any of these books. I'd love to hear it, and I'll see you in the next one.